What is up, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you're having a splendid day. My name is Maz, and in today's video we will cover what things to consider when driving your car during winter, specifically the Mustang. And by winter I mean not winter in form of what you get in Florida, driving around with summer tires all year around. I'm speaking for us that live in places where we actually do get winter then. So with that said, let's go ahead with the video. The absolute first thing you should think of if you want to drive your Mustang during winter or any other powerful rear wheel driven car, that is to think with what you have up here. Hopefully you are wise and much smarter than I am. You don't want to do anything stupid. You want to think ahead. Potentially you won't be driving at similar speeds as you are driving during your summer periods, then taking the on-ramps, driving too fast on the highway, etc. Because even if you do have winter tires, studded or non-studded, the winter tires are much softer. You don't have the same grip, and also potentially there could be ice, etc. on the road, which makes it very tricky. And also sometimes you don't even see that it is icy out there. So if you are not driving carefully and thinking with your little machinery up there, you could end up in problems really quickly, specifically then with this type of car then. That is tip number one. The second absolute most important thing is to equip your car with appropriate winter tires. So depending on where you live and what type of conditions you have, you want to consider which type of tires you throw on your car. In my case, I have the DIGGIN Hakkapeliitta R2s, so these are non-studded tires, and these are specific for Nordic conditions. And by Nordic conditions I mean we get more rough winters than, let's say, Central Europe, like in Germany or France, etc. In those countries they have other type of winter tires, and usually those type of tires come in wider widths, etc., which potentially then makes sense then because they don't have as bad winters as we have here in Sweden. Also, as I mentioned, these are non-studded tires. There are studded versions as well. Pirelli has winter tires, Michelin has winter tires, etc. However, I opted to go for the DIGGIN non-studded tires because these are one of the best tires on the market, no questions asked. And again then, I definitely feel that the car does not, quite obviously does not handle as well. These tires are really soft. The sidewall is soft on them as well. So, and this is a heavy car. You need to really be careful with what you're doing, especially if you are too close to vehicles in front of you, etc. And if you need to do a maneuver, it will be a bit tricky with this type of tire. So that is also something to consider. But again then, please do throw on some appropriate winter tires if you are driving your car in winter period then. Also, I am running the same dimensions on all four corners, so I'm running a square setup of 255 40 19 inch tires then on the OEM Performance Pack 1 wheels. However, unfortunately, as the wheels are staggered, I can't just simply switch the rears to the front, etc. So that is something to keep in mind. And usually you want to have as narrow as possible wheel and tire combination for winter. However, in the conditions we have here, I found it to be totally adequate with the 255 section tires then. And also one thing to remember with regards to winter tires are that you can't drive that fast with winter tires, at least not these Nordic tires then, or specific for the Nordic winter conditions. With the Central European winter tires, you can actually drive rather fast because they have a completely different tire compound then. So that is tip number 2. All right, it is time for tip number 3, and it is an old school tip. Even though the Mustang is a heavy horse, it helps to have more weight over the rear axle, and that we can achieve with 2-3 bags, let's say somewhere around 100 pounds or so, with rock salt or gravel, which then will give you that extra weight over the rear tires in order for you to have better traction. Do make sure that you secure them so they don't fly around in your trunk and most likely will unsettle the balance of the car. And another thing that is a positive with filling or having bags of salt or gravel in the trunk is that if you do get stuck, you can use the salt to actually melt that snow or ice, or to use the gravel in order to get that little bit of more traction in order to get loose, or why not a combination of the two. The fourth tip is to have a shovel or similar with you in the car, and that doesn't only apply if you're driving a Mustang. You should always keep a shovel in your car while driving during the winter period, because you can get caught off guard, you can drive off the road, you come outside after having the car parked outside then, and you get hit by a snowstorm and you need to drive the car away. It is going to be very difficult if there is a ton of snow surrounding your car and you don't have a tool to aid you. So that is where the shovel comes into play. And also, if you are a good Samaritan, you want to help out your fellow friends or family or strangers that have problems, you can use the shovel to help them out as well then. And as we talked about in the previous step then, the previous point was that you can have the gravel or salt. You could use the shovel also then to distribute that around the car to get that extra traction then. Did I mention to use your little fellow up there? It is time for tip number 5. Most cars that have selectable drive modes have a rain or snow mode. The Mustang have it. I did use it quite often actually last year. It helps out. Some of you might laugh and say, yeah, you don't need the snow and wet mode. That's up to you, but in certain situations, especially if you don't have studded tires, that mode is really helpful. I have a video from last year when I was talking about driving the car during winter. I'll link to that video down below. You can see clearly the difference between normal mode and the snow and wet mode. Even at full throttle on ice, the car barely lets go in the rear. Of course, if you come too fast into a corner or etc. and you have the snow and wet mode, that won't help you. This is more to be able to accelerate off the line or similar, and also not to have a big slide while taking a corner then potentially. We have now reached tip number 6, and that is to keep your washer fluid filled up, and also filled up with the appropriate washer fluid, meaning the right concentration, or different washer fluid that can withstand really cold temperatures, because you don't want that stuff to freeze up and your windshield is all gutted up with dirt and gravel and whatnot. And specifically during winter driving, when it's dark, it's mushy, it's slushy, you want to have as clear view as possible. Then keeping the washer fluid filled up with the appropriate fluid then is an easy thing to do. However, it is an easy thing to forget. Tip number 7, and that is to equip your car with a set of rubber floor mats. These are Ford OEM ones, and they are really sturdy and really good. So these are for the rear passengers, and as you can see, the lip around them is quite high, so any melted snow etc. will be kept in place and you won't ruin your carpets. And these are easy then to wash and maintain. I also have, which doesn't have to do anything with winter driving, I have a mat in my trunk as well that gives good protection for some reason. Then if you want to put in snowy things or dirty things in the trunk while driving during winter then. And also I don't have them here now, I have removable mud flaps or mud guards, sorry, which then I had on all 4 corners, not to get too much rocks, gravel, etc. Spitting on my paint. I do though have Expel paint protection film on my car, so it could be argued if that would be needed, but not all of you guys do have paint protection film because that costs a hell of a lot. However, having some form of rock guards or mud flaps or whatever they are called, I would highly recommend that, specifically on the Mustang, as the paint is very, very delicate then. Tip number 8, and that is to maintain your paint before you go into the winter period, and also maintaining that during the winter period. It will make your life much easier to keep your car fresh and clean. Believe me, you don't want to stand outside washing your car when it's freezing. No, that's nothing that I would recommend. I have OCD, so I was washing my car very frequently last year. However, I did have ceramic coating on my car and wheels, etc. So the washing procedure itself was rather smooth, to be honest. So that is something to keep in mind. Either you do it yourself or you can have someone else do it. You don't necessarily have to have ceramic coating. You can have some sort of wax, you can have some sort of sealant, etc. There are products which you nowadays spray on and buff off, which are an easy way to give you that how should I say, protected paint, but at the same time it is easy then to apply and to maintain. So that is something I would highly recommend, especially if you do care about the appearance of your car and want to take care of it then. While we are on the subject of keeping your car fresh, and if you have planned to own your car for several years and also drive it during winter, and if you don't already have this, and that is to do some sort of rust proofing on the undercarriage of the car, you can get it in the doors, etc. There are companies that will help you out with that. The cars in Sweden always do get some sort of treatment, some better than the others. The Mustang is gutted with some yucky stuff all around the undercarriage. I even had it in my wheels and springs. That is not how it's supposed to be done, but they had gone crazy. So after driving the car last year and all year this year and so on, I can't see any proof of stuff rusting apart from the regular stuff you would have on your suspension parts, etc. But that is inevitable. But with regards to the chassis and so on itself, I can't see any rust or so that I would recommend. I don't know how much it costs where you live. Usually it would land you somewhere between, I don't know, $800, $600 to $1,000 potentially then to do your car, and some of the stuff you need to do a yearly maintenance then. But that is recommended if you are going to keep your car for a long time and also then planning to drive it during winter. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, that was my points with regards to driving your car during winter, either being it a Mustang or any other car, but some specific considerations needs to be taken with regards to having a rear wheel driven car, and specifically if it's a bit more on the high horsepower side then. If you think with the brain and not with your right foot, there are no issues as such. You could have fun, but if you do want to have fun, make sure you do it in a controlled environment so you don't risk others. That is a very important thing to keep in mind. You don't necessarily have to do everything I mentioned in the points previously, but if you do the basic stuff, you're just fine then. Anyhow, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment sections below. Give me 1 thumbs up for the video, 2 thumbs down, subscribe, and until the next time.